Chapter 606. At this moment, Ling Shiqi was sitting in the main hall of Xingji Pavilion. His face was filled with exhaustion, but there was a cold smile on his face. Beside him, Feng Sha Mo, Sulwan, Elder Huang, He Fei Chen, and the other inspectors were all present. Others might not know that Ling Shiqi had been assassinated, but they knew. So for the past half a month, they had been very worried. Although Ling Shiqi hadn't been promoted for long, he was able to distribute his power and resources to his subordinates. This treatment wasn't just good. Especially those who were originally part of the 29 guards. Ever since they followed Ling Shiqi, not only were they able to hold their heads high, they were also able to receive endless resources. So of course they didn't want to lose this boss. Ling Shiqi finished listening to He Fei Chen's report. In the past half a month, Eunuch Gao and Li Ju Cheng had been fighting openly and covertly. One wanted to kill him, the other wanted to save him. They had already clashed several times in the dark. But after fighting for so long, they couldn't even find Ling Shiqi's shadow. They also didn't expect Ling Shiqi to silently return to the capital. He Fei Chen's head was full of doubts. He asked, "Sir, how did you come back during this time? We mobilized all the information we could, but we still couldn't find you. And that Li Ju Cheng, he definitely has his own methods of gathering information. This is the same as 2 senior managers going all out to find you, but they still couldn't find you. Sir, could it be that you flew back?" Ling Shiqi laughed inwardly. He Fei Chen really did say it. He really did fly back. Ningyang County was tens of thousands of li away from the capital. He had used the fate skill to teleport 2,000 li away. During the skill's cooldown, he had the Gu King transform into wings and fly 10,000 zhang in the air. With his incomparably deep spiritual energy, he could fly for several days without stopping. When his spiritual energy ran out, he would hide and recover. So his feet didn't touch the ground at all. It would be strange if others could find him. Ling Shiqi was about to speak to He Fei Chen, but suddenly, a figure appeared in the hall. Everyone was startled, but they immediately lowered their heads respectfully. Because the person who came was Eunuch Gao. Eunuch Gao had also received news that Ling Shiqi had returned. He immediately rushed over as fast as he could. He looked at Ling Shiqi with a complicated expression. He waved his hand, and the others consciously bowed and left. Disciple greets master. Ling Shiqi also bowed, but Eunuch Gao still didn't say anything. His eyes stared straight at Ling Shiqi, and finally landed on the blood-stained demonic blade on Ling Shiqi's back. There didn't seem to be anything strange with him. With him didn't seem to be in any way. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Eunuch Gao threw his head back and laughed loudly. His laughter was filled with delight. This was the first time Ling Shiqi had seen Eunuch Gao laugh so heartily. Eunuch Gao laughed for a few breaths before he stopped. He patted Ling Shiqi's shoulder and praised, "Good, good, good. You did very well. Not only did you help me take back Dark Thunder Manor in Ningyang County, but you also killed Li Zhangtao. You even avoided Li Ju Cheng's assassination and successfully returned. I really didn't misjudge you. I can imagine Li Ju Cheng's expression when he knows you're back. Hee, I haven't been so happy in a long time." Ling Shiqi said modestly, "This is what disciples should do." "Master, please take a seat." Eunuch Gao sat in the main seat in the hall. He said with a smile, "Xingji, I won't be long-winded. Just tell me what reward you want." "Oh." Ling Shiqi was slightly surprised. Eunuch Gao even said this. It seemed he was really happy. He thought for a moment, then said, "I'll leave it to master." "You're still so cautious." Eunuch Gao nodded with satisfaction and said, "Well, you don't lack resources. I'll give you 100,000 merit points. You can get whatever resources you need." Eunuch Gao gave him 100,000 merit points. This was a huge amount that an ordinary War Thunder Guard might not be able to save up in their lifetime. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but be moved. "Also, do you remember that you all have the qualifications to enter the Heavenly Tomb after the elite meeting?" Eunuch Gao continued, the heavenly tomb can't be opened at will. Every time it opens, a part of the spiritual power will leak out. This kind of spiritual power must be sealed for many years to replenish. Therefore, generally speaking, the heavenly tomb will only open once every 3 years. According to this time, you will only be able to enter after a year. I can let the 5 of you enter the heavenly tomb in advance. And I can let you stay in there for 1 more day. Leng Shiqi also specially went to the heavenly tomb to learn about it. Since the establishment of the Thunderfire dynasty, it was the place where the Sky Origin Realm experts died. Now, there were probably hundreds of Sky Origin Realm experts who died in there. It was filled with the insights and understanding of the spirit cultivation Tao of those experts. Even if he could comprehend a little bit, it would be enough to benefit him for a lifetime. Unfortunately, since they came to the imperial capital, the matter of entering the heavenly tomb seemed to have disappeared. Now that they could enter in advance and have 1 more day, even if Leng Shiqi had a strong will, he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Eunuch Gao smiled and said, in addition to the 100,000 merit points and entering the heavenly tomb in advance, I also promised you that as long as you take back the Dark Thunder Manor in Ningyan County, I will give you the position of Deputy General Manager. I have already left the position of Deputy General Manager in charge of Ningyan County for you. However, your strength and merits are not enough for you to be the Deputy General Manager. Otherwise, you will be ostracized by the other 3 general managers. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi agreed. After all, the Deputy General Manager was in existence second only to the 4 general managers. Normally, the position was held by a great expert in the unity of heaven and man realm. However, in the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters, there were many unity of heaven and man realm experts, but there were only 36 deputy general managers. This meant that if one wanted to be the deputy general manager, not only did they need strength, but they also needed qualifications, merits, and connections. Leng Shiqi's current connections were sufficient. With Eunuch Gao as his backer, Eunuch Gao had already vacated the position of deputy general manager for him. The path had already been paved. Unfortunately, his strength and contributions were far from enough. Seeing Leng Shiqi's normal expression, Eunuch Gao was even more satisfied. He said, in terms of strength, you can only rely on yourself. Entering the heavenly tomb is an excellent opportunity. You have to grasp it well. In addition, I will also arrange some missions for you to increase your reputation and merits so that you can sit in the Deputy General Manager's position as soon as possible. As long as Leng Shiqi became the Deputy General Manager, Eunuch Gao's authority in the Dark Thunder Guard would be increased. After Lei Qingjun passed away, the possibility of him keeping his current position would be higher. I see that you are very tired. Rest well for a few days. When you come out of the heavenly tomb, we will settle the score with Li Juecheng. Eunuch Gao's eyes were full of bone-chilling coldness when he said this. Chapter 607. A few days later, the 5 members of the elite meeting gathered in the Dark Thunder Mansion. The others also learned that they were about to enter the Tomb of Heaven, but they were a little confused. Why did they gather in the Dark Thunder Mansion? As the hosts, Leng Shiqi and Wu Diao naturally had to entertain the other 3. At this time, the 5 of them were drinking and chatting happily in Leng Shiqi's Xingji Pavilion. Now the 5 of them were all in Gang Spirit Realm. Except for Leng Shiqi, who was at the 2nd level of Gang Spirit Realm, the other 4 were at the 1st level of Gang Spirit Realm. Leng Shiqi, who had the lowest cultivation at the beginning, had surpassed them. But now no one would envy Leng Shiqi. Although they were hostile to each other in the small chaotic cave of 5 elements, most of them joined hands to break through the stairway to heaven. Although Leng Shiqi cheated them of a lot of resources, he did save their lives. And these people were more or less related to Leng Shiqi. For example, Wu Diao was still the inspector now. In this respect, he was Leng Shiqi's subordinate. Di Chuan had been feeling guilty since he escaped first last time. More importantly, he recently received news from the Huangchuan tribe that it was Leng Shiqi who helped the Huangchuan tribe destroy the Huangchuan tribe. Many third-class sects came to join them. They also controlled 3 mineral veins. It could be said that their momentum and strength had soared. He was more grateful to Ling Shiqi. And Zhuge Puha had regarded Ling Shiqi as the person he should support and assist. He hoped that one day he could restore the glory of the Star Clan. As for Delta Origi, she would only secretly work hard to catch up with Ling Shiqi. Therefore, their relationship had unknowingly become much closer. When they were talking, Eunuch Gao came in. Ling Shiqi and others hurriedly stood up and said, "Greetings, Supervisor Gao. Everything has been arranged." "Follow me," Eunuch Gao said bluntly. Then, he turned around and left. Ling Shiqi and the others quickly followed him. But as he walked, he discovered something strange. The direction they were walking in was clearly the direction of Dark Thunder Manor's treasury. Could it be that the heavenly tomb was in Dark Thunder Manor? Ling Shiqi shook his head, thinking that it was impossible. However, Eunuch Gao said, the heavenly tomb is actually located in the deepest part of the Dark Thunder Manor. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi almost bit his tongue. Even if you want to slap someone in the face, you can't do it so quickly. As you all know, the heavenly tomb is the place where a Sky Origin stage cultivator passed away. Therefore, all information must be kept strictly confidential. Therefore, the heavenly tomb is best placed in the Dark Thunder Manor. In other words, it is precisely because of the existence of the heavenly tomb that the Dark Thunder Manor was built here, Eunuch Gao explained. Everyone was enlightened. So that's how it is. Soon, they arrived at the entrance of Dark Thunder Manor's treasury. This time, with Eunuch Gao personally leading the way, the guards outside did not stop them. Eunuch Gao led the 5 of them through one door after another. Every time they passed through a door, they would enter a room with even more precious resources. Everyone was envious. They only stopped when they arrived at the 7th door. This door looked very ordinary. Aside from being simple and unadorned, there was nothing special about it. However, when they arrived at this place, there were still a few extremely powerful divine senses that enveloped them. This place was also guarded by a Sky Origin stage cultivator. This is the entrance to the heavenly tomb. Eunuch Gao instructed, once you enter, you can walk around the heavenly tomb as you wish and look for things that are suitable for you. However, do not destroy a single blade of grass or tree inside. Do you understand? Ling Shiqi and the others said in unison, "Yes, Eunuch Gao." "All right, I will open the heavenly tomb now." With that, Eunuch Gao's expression turned serious. A strange-shaped token appeared in his hand. Just as he was about to open the heavenly tomb, a voice came from behind him. "Eunuch Gao, why didn't you say anything about opening the heavenly tomb?" It turned out that Li Ju Cheng had walked over with 2 young men. Seeing Li Ju Cheng, Ling Shiqi's killing intent rose in his heart. Eunuch Gao's expression also darkened. "Li Ju Cheng, I didn't look for you, but you still dare to show yourself?" Li Ju Cheng chuckled and said, "Eunuch Gao, what are you talking about? As one of the 4 eunuchs, can't I enter the treasury?" Eunuch Gao glanced at the 2 people behind Li Ju Cheng and sneered, "What, Eunuch Li wants to bring people into the heavenly tomb? The 2 of them have the qualifications to enter the heavenly tomb." Li Ju Cheng walked in front of Eunuch Gao and looked him in the eyes. He was full of confidence. What Li Ju Cheng said was right. Although there were very few people who could enter the heavenly tomb each time, it was not only the elites of the elite association who could enter. People like the Dark Thunder Guards, the Discipline Division, the Patrol Guards, and some people who had outstanding achievements were also qualified to enter. Li Ju Cheng's 2 family members were qualified. Their names were Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi. Both of them had just entered the Gang Spirit Realm and were about 40 years old. Those who could break through the Gang Spirit Realm at this age were extremely rare geniuses, even if they were not as good as those in the elite club. They were the focus of the next generation of the Li family. Originally, the 2 of them were going to enter the heavenly tomb with Ling Shiqi 1 year later, but Li Ju Cheng found out that Eunuch Gao had opened the heavenly tomb in advance. If he didn't know, it would be fine. But now that he knew, he would never let go of this opportunity. What if I say no? Eunuch Gao didn't lose in momentum at all. Li Ju Cheng suddenly smiled. "I know you can open the heavenly tomb in advance because His Majesty allows it." Anyway, the heavenly tomb is going to open. What's wrong with 2 more people going in? Or is Steward Gao already able to cover the sky with one hand in the dark thunder guards? You know, there are still several people who are qualified to enter the heavenly tomb. If they know that Steward Gao opened the heavenly tomb in advance and caused them to wait for 3 more years, do you think they will resent Steward Gao? He was threatening Eunuch Gao. Those who were qualified to enter the heavenly tomb were definitely not simple. If those people made trouble together, it would be really a big trouble. That's right. It doesn't matter if there are 2 more people or 2 less people. Eunuch Gao said seriously, but he suddenly changed the topic. But I won't let them go in. What are you going to do? Li Ju Cheng's face darkened and he no longer pretended. He said bluntly, Eunuch Gao, let's talk about the matter as it is. As long as you take the 2 juniors of the Li family in, I can help you cover it up. Otherwise, even if His Majesty has agreed, it is inevitable that some people will be dissatisfied with you. Those people may not be a direct threat to Steward Gao, but we are all officials in the court and will meet frequently. Sooner or later, we will meet. When that time comes, I'm afraid Steward Gao won't be as strong as he is now. Eunuch Gao's eyes turned cold. He was about to retaliate when Lang Shiqi secretly sent a voice transmission to Eunuch Gao, Master, why don't you let them in? Huh? Eunuch Gao was puzzled. He knew that Lang Shiqi was a vengeful person. Li Ju Cheng had just sent people to kill him, but now he was willing to let Li Ju Cheng's people into the heavenly tomb? This didn't seem like Lang Shiqi's style. Eunuch Gao also sent a voice transmission, do you have some tricks up your sleeve again? Master, disciple has heard that the heavenly tomb is not very stable at times. Who knows if an accident might happen and someone might accidentally die inside. Lang Shiqi's voice was filled with dense killing intent. Hearing this, Eunuch Gao secretly smiled. He knew what to do. Chapter 608. After Eunuch Gao understood Lang Shiqi's intentions, he began to bargain with Li Ju Cheng. In the end, he agreed to let the 2 of them enter the heavenly tomb. Li Ju Cheng was the one who lost a little, but he was all smiles. On the other hand, Eunuch Gao's expression was a little ugly. Li Ju Cheng naturally felt that he had made a profit. He still beat Eunuch Gao. His mood improved a little after failing to assassinate Lang Shiqi. He turned around and said, Li Xinhong, Li Xinqi, after the 2 of you enter the heavenly tomb, try your best to comprehend the various comprehensions within. Don't let Eunuch Gao down. Yes, Patriarch. The 2 of them said at the same time. All right, I'll come to pick you up tomorrow. Eunuch Gao, I'll take my leave first. Li Ju Cheng waved his hand and turned to leave. Eunuch Gao looked at Li Ju Cheng's back and secretly sneered. Then, he went through a complicated process and finally opened the legendary heavenly tomb. Suddenly, a thick wave of heaven and earth origin energy rushed towards him. Just by inhaling a little, he could feel the spiritual energy in his body shaking. The strange thing was that this heaven and earth origin energy was very different from the dragon vein. The dragon vein was the place where the luck of the Thunderfire dynasty gathered. The heaven and earth origin energy there was extremely pure, to the point that it was almost visible to the naked eye. However, the spiritual power in the heavenly tomb was mixed with a lot of strange powers. They couldn't tell what those powers were, but they were all shocked. They knew that the strange powers must be the cultivation comprehension of the Sky Origin stage cultivators who had passed away in this place. You guys can go in. You can walk freely in the heavenly tomb and comprehend the things that are most suitable for you. As for how much you can comprehend, it will depend on your own ability. Eunuch Gao waved his hand and Lang Shiqi and the others walked into the heavenly tomb. The heavenly tomb did not have a formation like the dragon vein. After they walked in, they were not separated. Lang Shiqi looked around and found that the heavenly tomb was not big or small. It was about 20 to 30 miles in radius. As far as the eye could see, there were huge tombs. Each tomb had a different shape and was surrounded by fog of different colors. At a rough glance, there were hundreds of tombs. They were the Sky Origin stage cultivators who had died in this place for thousands of years. After their deaths, they did not build a beautiful tomb for themselves, nor did they insist on having their names passed down for hundreds of generations. Instead, they chose to end their lives here, contributing their last bit of value to the Thunderblaze dynasty. Just this magnanimity alone was worthy of admiration. The 7 people present all cultivated different cultivation methods. They looked around and found tombs that were similar to their own cultivation methods. Leng Shiqi was the only one left standing in the same spot. Because he didn't know where to go. In other words, he could go anywhere. Although his main cultivation technique was the heavenly cycle star god technique, he had also integrated all the other cultivation techniques into it. It could be said that it contained all the attributes that he knew. Therefore, the insights left behind by every expert here were useful to him. Since that was the case, Leng Shiqi was not in a hurry to go to a tomb. He first walked around the heavenly tomb and then came to the center of the heavenly tomb. There was nothing special here. Leng Shiqi immediately sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Next, his head spirit cavity shone and a green mini Leng Shiqi drilled out. His primordial spirit had left his body. When his primordial spirit appeared, the heavenly tomb became different. Everywhere, there were mysterious threads that could be seen with the naked eye connecting the heaven and earth. These threads were as thin as hair and had different colors. Leng Shiqi had seen similar threads in the 5 elements Chaos Grotto Heaven before. However, the difference now was that the threads in the heavenly tomb were constantly trembling. Every time they trembled, there seemed to be a strange and indescribable power spreading out. Leng Shiqi's primordial spirit was baptized by the strange power. Immediately, his divine sense went into a daze and he entered a strange state. In a split second, the water in front of him surged towards him, and several illusory figures suddenly appeared. Water nourishes all things and nourishes the world. The power of nourishment is the best of the law of water. No, water can carry a boat and also sink it. The power of waves is enough to destroy the heaven and earth. Too shallow. The surface of the water looks calm, but there are hidden turbulent waves. The combination of hardness and gentleness is the great Tao. Unfortunately, we are still one step behind. These people spoke one after another in a language that Leng Shiqi could not understand. Just as he was confused, the heaven and earth changed and he instantly arrived in a wind prison. Everything in the world is strong and fast. The power of the wind is the power that can best represent the law of wind. It is extremely narrow. The wind can be as slow as cotton and can kill without a trace. The law of wind is not only fast and slow. The wind is formless and can tear apart space, complementing the law of space. What's the use of saying it well? Didn't you die before comprehending the law of heaven and earth? Although Leng Shiqi still did not understand much, what these people said could not be separated from one word, and that was, law. Although he had not been in contact with the law, he had heard of it. What was the law? Everything between heaven and earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, and the flow of time were all supported by the power of law. It could be said that the law of heaven and earth was the original power of this world. These were all what Leng Shiqi had heard in his previous life. In today's world, they may not be exactly the same, but the difference would not be too big. He also thought that the spirit cultivators in the spirit gang realm used their own spiritual power as the foundation and stole a trace of heaven and earth spiritual power with the help of external objects to condense spirit gang. And the spirit cultivators in the unity of heaven and men realm could be more compatible with heaven and earth and could directly mobilize a part of heaven and earth spiritual power. As for the strong cultivators in the Tianyuan realm, as the name implied, they could already control heaven and earth spiritual power. There was only one word difference between heaven and earth spiritual power, but there was a huge difference between heaven and earth. Heaven and earth spiritual power was the spiritual chi that overflowed between heaven and earth, which was the energy that spirit cultivators needed to absorb and transform into cultivation. The concentration of spiritual power in each place was different. And heaven and earth spiritual power was the original power of this world. A person's body could be said to be a treasure that could continuously unearth one's potential. However, the problem was that a person's potential was not unlimited. No matter how much spiritual energy one could store, it was still one's own strength. How could it compete with the power of heaven and earth? If you could grasp even a trace of heaven and earth's spiritual power, it was enough to break mountains and rivers, and crack the earth. Lin Shiqi had seen two strong cultivators in the Tianyuan realm fight. One was the pavilion master of the blood-clothing pavilion, Hateful Blade. When they were preparing to fight with the disciples of the Lyoha spiritual region in the Blood-Kill Hall, Hateful Blade could cross space with just a light stroke. There was also Huang Baixing from the Mountain Sea sect in the Donglin County. When the entrance to the illusory spirit's secret realm appeared, he could seal the entrance with a raise of his hand. And in the demonic Miasma mountain range, the Tianyuan realm cultivators of the Imperial Beast Camp and the Blood Beast sect had also fought. Lin Shiqi did not see it, but just from the destructive power, he knew how terrifying the Tianyuan realm was. However, Lin Shiqi heard some clues from the conversation of the phantoms just now, and that was that the Tianyuan realm cultivators did not seem to be able to control the laws of heaven and earth. Then was there a higher realm above the Tianyuan realm? However, before he had time to think about it, the scene in front of him changed again. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in a strange world. The sky here was chaotic and filled with a terrifying sense of destruction, but the ground was lush and full of vitality. There were only two phantoms here. They did not speak, but looked at Lin Shiqi at the same time. Chapter 609. Two godlike gazes fell on Lin Shiqi's body. His primordial spirit suddenly twisted, as if it would collapse at any moment. Lin Shiqi was horrified and quickly withdrew his primordial spirit. Just before his primordial spirit returned to his body, the lips of the two shadows moved as if they were saying something, but Lin Shiqi didn't hear it. He had just withdrawn his primordial spirit, but unexpectedly, a monstrous wave was set off in his spiritual sea. Boundless spiritual power of heaven and earth rushed in crazily. What he didn't know was that at this moment, with him as the center, all the spiritual power and all kinds of strange energy in the entire heavenly tomb were rapidly gathering, forming a huge vortex in the sky above Lin Shiqi. Such a huge commotion caused Gu San, Zhuge Puha, Wu Diao, and the others to turn pale with fright. Even the Li families Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi looked at this unbelievable scene in amazement. At the same time, these people were also very depressed. They had just found a suitable comprehension for themselves, but before they could comprehend it, they were forcefully interrupted. Some people had already found the way. If they went down quietly, they would have gained a lot. Now that they were interrupted, of course, they were not in a good mood. Delta Origi was one of them. She raised her head and knew that this matter was most likely caused by Lin Shiqi. She knew that the gap between her and Lin Shiqi's strength was getting bigger and bigger. She originally wanted to use this opportunity to close the gap, but unfortunately, such a thing had happened. Delta Origi's face became as cold as ice, and she walked towards the center of the heavenly tomb. The others also knew that it was impossible to continue comprehending, so they all followed her. Li Xinhong's expression was also very ugly. He shouted in a low voice, "I just comprehended the cultivation experience of Yunzhou layman from 400 years ago, and even obtained his cultivation method inheritance. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Damn it, I want to see who dares to disturb my comprehension and run amok in the heavenly tomb." When everyone arrived at the center of the heavenly tomb, they were all stunned by the scene before them. Originally, the huge spirit energy vortex in the sky was shocking enough, but when they got closer, they realized that Lin Shiqi was sitting under the vortex. A river of energy was pouring down like a river from the ninth heaven, pouring into Lin Shiqi's body. At this moment, the Lin Shiqi was surrounded by a variety of different energies. Some of these energies could coexist peacefully, but most of them rejected each other. Therefore, Lin Shiqi was not feeling well at the moment. Right now, there were many kinds of power running around aimlessly in his body. If it weren't for the fact that he had opened up enough spirit veins and his body was strong enough, he would have exploded long ago. What was even more troublesome was that there was also an indescribable thing constantly drilling into his astral sea of consciousness. These things had no shape, could not be seen or touched, but they caused Lin Shiqi to feel an incomparable swelling pain in his head, causing him to have a splitting headache. In particular, his primordial spirit had been seriously injured and was dispirited. There was no way for him to resist, so he could only let these powers run amok. Fortunately, the stars of his heavenly cycle star technique could also absorb a lot of energy, reducing some of the pressure on him. Ling Shiqi also noticed that Delta Origi and the others had arrived. An idea flashed through his mind. He reached out and grabbed the void, grabbing a cloud of dark yellow mist from his side and instantly enveloping Wu Diao. At first, Wu Diao was surprised, thinking that Ling Shiqi was going to attack him. However, when he touched the dark yellow mist, he immediately felt the familiar power of the earth fill his body. His face immediately lit up with joy. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to absorb and comprehend the mysteries within. Then, Ling Shiqi grabbed again, and a cloud of nebula rushed towards Zhuge. With Wu Diao's previous experience, Zhuge did not dodge, but chose to do the same thing as Wu Diao. Then, a wild beast shadow drilled into Di Chuan's body. At the same time, a blood-red light surrounded Delta Origi. The moon suddenly hung high in the sky, and the moonlight bathed Delta Origi's body, making her look like a fairy under the moon. In order to alleviate the situation in his body, Ling Shiqi distributed a part of his energy to Delta Origi and the others, and chose the most suitable attributes for them. However, Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi did not receive this treatment. The two of them were not stupid, and they quickly saw through the trick. Li Xinhong stared fiercely at Ling Shiqi and transmitted his voice to Li Xinqi. He is Lu Xingji, the Lu Xingji who took away Dark Thunder Manor in Ningyang County. Dark Thunder Manor in Ningyang County was a money tree. If it was gone just like that, the resources that the Li family could enjoy in the future would definitely be reduced. Cutting off one's source of income was like killing one's parents. It could be said that everyone in the Li family hated Ling Shiqi to the bone now. Li Xinqi said maliciously, "Cousin, although I don't know what method this Lu Xingji used to make such a commotion, he must be in a very critical state now. Let's interrupt him and ruin his plans. It can be considered as venting our anger." "Okay, let's do that." The two of them burst out with spiritual gang, but before they could make a move, Ling Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the two of them. Li Xinhong and Li Xinhong's movements suddenly froze, because they found that Ling Shiqi's eyes were no longer black and white, but gold and silver. There was no emotion in the golden pupils and the silver sclera, just like a god above the 9 heavens. Ling Shiqi opened his 5 fingers, and a small black dot suddenly appeared between Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi. The black dot was only the size of a pinhole and was very inconspicuous. But it was this inconspicuous little black dot that had an unparalleled suction force. With this little black dot as the center, everything within 100 feet was crushed, twisted, and finally sucked into the black dot. And the black dot also became bigger, like a black hole that was going to swallow everything. The spiritual highlands of Li Xinhong and the others were also sucked away in an instant. Not only their spiritual highlands, but even the two of them were pulled by the endless suction force. In their panic, their bodies were torn into countless pieces by 5 horses and mercilessly devoured. Looking at Ling Shiqi again, blood was flowing out of his 7 orifices, and his eyes had returned to normal. He suddenly felt his vision go black and was about to faint. At this time, the shocking vortex in the sky suddenly condensed and then disappeared without a trace. Puff! Ling Shiqi raised his head and spat out a big mouthful of blood, and then gasped for breath. Now his mind was in great pain, as if countless sharp needles were piercing back and forth. However, his willpower and mental strength were too strong. He couldn't even faint even if he wanted to. He could only forcefully endure the inhuman pain. But what was strange was that his spiritual energy was not consumed. Instead, it made great progress. With a burst of sound in his body, his cultivation directly jumped 2 levels and jumped to the 4th level of Gang's spirit realm. He had cultivated the divine cycle star formula, a paragon cultivation technique. He had even integrated many high-grade cultivation techniques into it. Thus, it was very difficult for him to make a breakthrough in his cultivation base. At the very least, he would have to spend several times more time compared to others. Even if he had drawn 60 years' worth of power not long ago, it only allowed him to break through one level of cultivation. But now he inexplicably broke through 2 levels in a row, and broke through the huge barrier between the early stage and the middle stage of Gang's spirit realm. But he was not too happy, because his spiritual energy was almost exhausted, his primordial spirit was dying, and his spirit sea was a little broken. It would take a long time to make up for it. What confused Leng Shiqi was that he didn't understand what had happened to him at all. At first, the reason why his primordial spirit left his body was that his primordial spirit seemed to be closer to heaven and earth, so that he could better understand the things in the tomb of heaven. As for what happened later, it was an accident that was completely out of his expectation and even broke his cognition. In particular, he clearly knew that he was the one who killed Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi. These 2 people were originally on his must-kill blacklist, but the strange thing was that he didn't know what spiritual technique he used to kill them. Because he didn't know the skill that could distort space at all. What was more amazing was that the spiritual energy in his body didn't decrease, which meant that it was not a spiritual skill. Since it was not a spiritual skill, but it had such terrible power, then what was it? Chapter 610. Leng Shiqi looked at his left hand in a trance. It was this hand that killed 2 masters of Gang's spirit realm in an instant. It was as simple as eating and drinking. Now his head was full of bumps, and his heart was full of doubts. He was ready to think about it, but he had a big headache. He looked at Delta Origi and others who were still comprehending with their eyes closed. He sighed slightly. It seemed that the only thing he could do now was to take a rest. Helplessly, he took an elixir to nourish the spirit and closed his eyes to regulate his breath. When the day was up, the entrance of the tomb of heaven opened again. The 5 people opened their eyes at the same time. Delta Origi and others' eyes flashed with excitement more or less, because their cultivation had reached the 2nd level of Gang's spirit realm. And they must have comprehended a lot of things. Obviously, they had gained a lot. Leng Shiqi patted his sleeves and stood up. He secretly transmitted a voice to Delta Origi, "How's the harvest?" "Very good," Delta Origi said these 3 words directly, but it could be heard from her tone that she was really happy. Leng Shiqi continued, "Don't rush back to the discipline department tonight. I have a lot of important things to tell you. I'll come to you tonight." Delta Origi did not answer, but nodded slightly. Then Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi walked out of the tomb of heaven together. Outside the entrance of the tomb of heaven, Eunuch Gao saw only 5 winners of the elite club coming out. He smiled secretly. It seemed that the 2 cornerstones of the Li family had died. The death of the Li brothers was a great blow to the future development of the Li family, which also made Eunuch Gao happy. But then Eunuch Gao frowned slightly, because he saw Leng Shiqi also come out. Didn't he say that he could comprehend in the tomb of heaven for 2 days? Why did he come out now? Leng Shiqi found that Eunuch Gao was looking at him. He secretly transmitted a voice, "Master, I've already comprehended something. As the saying goes, greed is not mastery. The current comprehension is enough for me to digest for a long time. If we continue to stay in the heavenly tomb, we won't gain anything. It will only backfire." When Eunuch Gao heard this, he praised him inwardly. "It's rare for you to understand this. Very well, come back with me first." In fact, the heavenly tomb was in a state of chaos right now. There was no place for him to comprehend at all. Moreover, his spiritual power was still in a dried-up state. Even if he was given more time, he wouldn't be able to comprehend anything. He might as well just come out and be done with it. Eunuch Gao struggled for a while before closing the heavenly tomb again. Then, he led the others out of the treasury. However, what no one knew was that 2 faintly discernible voices rang out in the void of the heavenly tomb. "This person's cultivation is weak, but he possesses the power of the laws of the world. How rare. Since they can enter the heavenly tomb, they are the future pillars of the Thunderflame dynasty. Let's help them if we can." When everyone walked out of Dark Thunder Manor's treasury, Li Jueqing also walked over. He glanced around but didn't see Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi's figures. His expression immediately froze as a bad premonition arose in his heart. He asked in a deep voice, "Where are Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi? Why didn't they come out together?" Eunuch Gao pretended that he didn't hear anything and continued walking forward. Li Jueqing saw that the treasury's door was completely closed. A strong spiritual power fluctuation rose from his body as he shouted, "Steward Gao, don't you need to explain?" At this moment, Eunuch Gao stopped in his tracks. He seemed to have just realized that Li Jueqing was here. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Steward Li. I was thinking about an important matter and didn't notice Steward Li. Please forgive me. Don't give me that." Li Jueqing pulled a long face and said, "Tell me, where did Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi go?" Eunuch Gao stuffed his arms into his sleeves and said indifferently, "It's like this. After a day, we opened the heavenly tomb on time. However, the two from the Li family were nowhere to be seen. After asking around, we found out that there was a sudden storm in the heavenly tomb for some reason. The elites from the elite society barely survived with their own abilities. As for the Li brothers..." Speaking of this, Eunuch Gao suddenly stopped talking. Li Jueqing's face almost turned red. The Li brothers actually died in the heavenly tomb? Li Jueqing had never heard of anyone dying in the heavenly tomb. Moreover, Eunuch Gao's words meant that the Li brothers were useless. They didn't survive because they didn't have the ability. However, Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi were the most outstanding disciples of the Li family's younger generation. They were only slightly inferior to the elites of the elite society. They were the future pillars of the Li family. These two people died. From the overall strength of the Li family, there wasn't much loss. After all, the Li family was deeply rooted. There were many spirit cultivators of the Gang spirit realm cultivated by the Li family or relying on them. However, from the perspective of family inheritance, the death of the two of them was equivalent to breaking half of the hope of the next generation of the Li family. It could be said that it was a great loss. More importantly, how could Li Jueqing believe Eunuch Gao's words? It must be Eunuch Gao who secretly killed the Li brothers. Eunuch Gao looked at Li Jueqing's expression and was very happy. It was rare to see one of the four directors lose his composure like this. However, Eunuch Gao still pretended to be surprised and said, "Director Li, you don't think it was us who did it, do you? The Li brothers are also rare talents of the Dark Thunder Guard. We can't wait to rope them in. Moreover, we can't afford the crime of murdering our comrades." Eunuch Gao. Li Jueqing was so angry that he was like a beast that was about to explode. He even shouted out Eunuch Gao's real name. Seeing this, Lin Shiqi secretly praised Eunuch Gao's brilliant method. He made Li Jueqing lose his composure after a series of sarcastic remarks. At this time, he stood up and said, "Director Li, this is absolutely true. There is indeed an abnormality in the heavenly tomb. All the power has gathered to form a terrifying huge vortex. We can't comprehend anything in it at all. On the contrary, we have to resist the rampaging power all the time. We almost lost our lives. Everyone can testify to this." The other people had a great connection with Lin Shiqi. Delta Origi, Zhuge Puha, and Di Chuan said one after another that this was the case. These three people were also from the Discipline Commission and had the support of the four punishment messengers. They were really not afraid of Li Jueqing. As for Wu Diao, he also stood up after a little hesitation. Li Jueqing was silent. His eyes instantly fixed on Lin Shiqi, and there was a faint bloody light in his eyes. "Lu Xingji. It's you. It must be you who did it." Only now did he remember that Lin Shiqi's strength could not be measured by the realm. When Lin Shiqi was half a step away from Gang spirit realm, he could kill Elder Wan, who was at the late stage of Gang spirit realm. Although Elder Wan was old, he was still at the late stage of Gang spirit realm. And Lin Shiqi was now at the fourth level of Gang spirit realm. It was not difficult for him to kill the Li brothers if he wanted to. Thinking of this, Li Jueqing was shocked and angry. At the same time, he found that Lin Shiqi was at the second level of Gang spirit realm before entering the Tomb of Heaven. How could he become the fourth level of Gang's spirit realm after only one day? From this, he judged that there was no change at all in the Tomb of Heaven. It must be that eunuch Gao and Lu Xingji had long planned to use this opportunity to suppress the Li family. Li Jueqing was full of killing intent. If he did not kill this man, he would be a big trouble in the future. Eunuch Gao stood aside and looked on with folded arms. Seeing this, Li Jueqing quickly calmed down. Having been in a high position for a long time, he knew that revenge was a dish best served cold. Besides, with eunuch Gao here, it was impossible for him to kill Lin Shiqi. If he suddenly attacked at this moment, he would be caught. He could only swallow this big loss. Good, very good. Li Jueqing suddenly laughed, but there was endless coldness in his laughter. This time I admit defeat, but you have to keep an eye on your precious disciple, lest he accidentally dies. Eunuch Gao smiled coldly and waved his hand. You don't have to worry about this. Let's go. Lin Shiqi and others directly ignored Li Jueqing and walked straight. When they passed by, Lin Shiqi secretly transmitted a voice to him, Eunuch Li, this is just collecting some interest. However, she immediately put on a cold face and said, I'm not free. She still clearly remembered that when she invited Lin Shiqi to build a force with her, Lin Shiqi refused. Lin Shiqi rubbed his nose. At that time, he was just a nobody on the Blood Mist Island, so it was reasonable for him to be cautious. Now, he had enough strength and confidence. More importantly, the Delta Origi could be said to be the only person he could trust in this world. Therefore, he planned to invite the Delta Origi to join the underworld. However, looking at the current state of the Delta Origi, it was obvious that this matter was not so easy. Lin Shiqi took out a gray-white jade slip from his mustard seed bracelet and said, this is my sincerity. Why don't you take a look first? The Delta Origi's gaze drifted back and forth between Lin Shiqi's face and the jade slip. In the end, she picked up the jade slip. After a few breaths, the Delta Origi showed some joy. Lin Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He knew that there was a chance. Recorded in the jade slip was the 9-in white bone claw that he had won from the lottery. This spiritual technique was indeed very suitable for the Delta Origi. Moreover, Lin Shiqi had also written down his experience when he reached perfection. With the Delta Origi's talent and formlessness, he believed that her cultivation would improve at a rapid pace. After a short while, the Delta Origi put down the jade slip. She also wanted the 9-in white bone claw, but she was a little unwilling to join Lin Shiqi's force so easily. She rolled her eyes and stretched out her hand. Give me some of your blood essence. Blood essence? Lin Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. What did she want his blood essence for? His body was very strong, and his qi and blood were vigorous. He also had a lot of blood essence, so taking out a few drops was nothing. However, the problem was that he had the bloodlines of the Dark Shadow clan and the Star clan. In particular, the Star bloodline had been completely awakened. If someone studied his blood essence, they might discover something. However, Lin Shiqi still forced out a few drops of blood essence and gave them to the Delta Origi. The Delta Origi smiled gently and explained, I have recently created a secret technique that requires some special blood. Hearing that the Delta Origi was actually creating a secret technique, Lin Shiqi was a little surprised because he had never done this before. For example, many of his cultivation methods and spiritual techniques were fused, but strictly speaking, they were not original. In fact, with his current cultivation and understanding of various cultivation methods and spiritual techniques, he could also create some spiritual techniques and secret techniques. However, the quality would definitely not be high, and it would take a lot of time, so the gains did not make up for the losses. Lin Shiqi looked at the Delta Origi. Now that he had taken the spiritual technique and the blood essence, did she have any other conditions? The Delta Origi also asked, how many people do you have in your force? How strong are they? Since she asked this question, it meant that she was already interested. However, this question also made Lin Shiqi feel a little awkward, but he could not lie, so he could only say, at the moment, it's just me. Swoosh. The Delta Origi's gaze suddenly changed. Although she did not say anything, Ling Shiqi could tell from her eyes that she meant, "Are you kidding me? You also know that I never do things that I am not confident in. Establishing a force is very important, and not just anyone is qualified to join. The force I want doesn't care about the number of people, but the quality. Whether it's strength or potential, it can't be weak. You are the first person I thought of." Ling Shiqi said seriously, "Also, I obtained a small secret realm by chance. It can be used as a place for a force's sect. It's very hidden, and it's almost invincible." "A secret realm?" The Delta Origi exclaimed, "You obtained a secret realm?" In today's world, there were very few forces that could establish a sect in a secret realm. Only the Yin Yang Hall, the 3 dynasties, and the 4 sacred spiritual realm had secret realms. Only hidden families like the Zhuge family had secret realms. Just as Ling Shiqi had said, controlling a secret realm meant that one was in an invincible position. Because as long as one hid within the secret realm, others wouldn't even be able to enter, so how could they attack one's forces? After thinking for a moment, the Delta Origi finally nodded and said, "I can join your force, but other than the 9 Yin white bone claw and the blood essence, you have to promise me something." "What is it?" "I haven't thought about it yet." The Delta Origi blinked. Ling Shiqi suddenly felt a headache. Another favor like this, and it was really a headache. After all, his spiritual power was almost exhausted, and he had not had time to recover. However, as long as he could get the Delta Origi to join him, he would agree to anything, let alone a favor. He immediately patted his chest and said, "Okay, I promise to be on call." The Delta Origi then asked, "What is this force called?" Seeing that the Delta Origi agreed, Ling Shiqi finally breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled and said, "Welcome to the underworld." Chapter 6:12. Just after Delta Origi agreed, Ling Shiqi opened the system interface and chose the option to invite a member of the territory. A system prompt suddenly appeared before his eyes. "Do you want to invite the other party to join the Mansion of the Dead?" "Yes." Immediately, a palm-sized mark of the netherworld appeared between Ling Shiqi and Delta Origi. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the Delta Origi's body. However, the Delta Origi did not seem to notice it. At the same time, Ling Shiqi's system interface also showed the basic information of Delta Origi, including cultivation, techniques, common spiritual skills, and so on. More importantly, Ling Shiqi discovered that he could control the mark that had just drilled into the Delta Origi's body. It seemed to be something like a seal. As long as he willed it, he could directly take away the life of Delta Origi. The territory system actually has such a trick up its sleeve? Ling Shiqi was also a little surprised. For Delta Origi, he naturally did not need to use such a method. However, the Mansion of the Dead would eventually expand, and it would take in more members in the future. With this guarantee, it meant that he had the power to kill the members of the Mansion of the Dead, which was indeed very advantageous. Immediately after, another system prompt appeared. "The territory upgrade conditions have been met. Would you like to spend 5,000 system coins to upgrade the territory?" "No." Ling Shiqi was not in a hurry to upgrade now. After all, he still had things to do tonight. It would not be too late to upgrade after everything was arranged. Delta Origi curiously asked, "Where is that arcane realm of yours? What does it look like?" Since Delta Origi had already become a member of the Mansion of the Dead, Ling Shiqi had nothing to hide. He said, "The Mansion of the Dead is actually with me. It's just that it's not convenient to enter the Mansion of the Dead now. I'll take you in to have a look in a few days." Delta Origi rolled her eyes at him and said in a bad mood, "If there's nothing else, let's go. Lei Mayan is still waiting for me to report back. I'll look for you in a few days." After saying that, Ling Shiqi disappeared in a flash. In fact, after the Delta Origi became members of the underworld, he could directly bring the Delta Origi into the underworld. The reason why he didn't want the Delta Origi to enter was because the current underworld was simply too shabby. If the Delta Origi saw the Mansion of the Dead, which was not even comparable to a small village, they might just turn around and leave in a fit of anger. Therefore, Ling Shiqi planned to wait until the mansion of the dead was upgraded before bringing the Delta Origi in to take a look. After leaving, Ling Shiqi did not return to Dark Thunder Manor. Instead, he traveled through the streets of the inner city like a ghost. Soon, he arrived at an inconspicuous alley. Zhuge Puha was waiting for him here. After everyone left the heavenly tomb, Ling Shiqi sent a voice transmission to Zhuge Puha to meet him here. He was prepared to hand over the Star Clan's secret treasure that he had obtained in Tranquil Sun County. There were too many high-grade resources in that batch of treasures. Ling Shiqi was also very envious when he saw them. He had also taken a portion of them for himself, but even so, he took out dozens of mustard seed bags and handed them to Zhuge Puha. Zhuge Puha opened one of them and his eyes widened. He could not believe what he saw. He actually saw countless high-grade materials. What shocked him even more was that these materials were basically ancient materials that had been extinct for a long time. Most of them were star system materials, which were very suitable for the spirit cultivators of the Zhuge family. Although the Zhuge family had accumulated a large number of experts over the past hundreds of thousands of years, one should not forget that the strength of a spirit cultivator was not only dependent on the cultivation realm. Spirit weapons were also a very important factor that affected the level of strength. As long as they had these high-grade materials, there was hope to refine a large number of high-grade spirit weapons, which would greatly increase the overall combat power of the Zhuge family. In the future, they would have more confidence to restore the glory of the Star Clan. Zhuge Puha was stunned and could not say a word for a long time. Ling Shiqi could only say, "Brother Zhuge, I have already obtained the secret treasure of Tranquil Sun County. According to the terms of the transaction, I have also kept a portion of the materials. I will have to trouble you to pass the rest to Senior Zhuge Yun. My business with the Zhuge family has come to an end. Farewell." Before Zhuge Puha could react, Ling Shiqi quickly used remnant wind and lightning light steps to leave the place. After he had seen the thousands of experts in the Zhuge family and the secret treasure of Tranquil Sun County, he knew that the Star Clan had indeed left behind many backup plans. This also meant that the Zhuge family would come out sooner or later. When that time came, there would be a storm that would sweep across the entire falling star continent. Therefore, it was better for Ling Shiqi to keep a certain distance from the Zhuge family and the Star Clan. When Ling Shiqi returned to the Xingji Pavilion of the Dark Thunder Mansion, he immediately went into the Mansion of the Dead. He came to the front of the Gate of the Dead. At this moment, there were already 1,000 or 2,000 souls floating around. Almost all of these souls were people who had died in the Baron Chuan tribe and the Wasteland tribe. A small portion of them were the Dark Thunder Guards of Tranquil Sun County led by Li Zhangtao. Of course, there were also the Li brothers who had just died. With so many souls gathered here, they were emitting a terrifying aura of the netherworld. They even crowded the front of the Gate of the Dead. Ling Shiqi summoned the system and chose to upgrade territory. Spending 5,000 system coins to upgrade territory. Territory upgrading. Territory upgrade successful. In an instant, the entire Mansion of the Dead shook, and black gas filled the sky. The area of the Mansion of the Dead expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, it was more than 10 miles wide. Gradually, the black gas dissipated, revealing brand new buildings. Ling Shiqi looked around and saw that the Gate of the Dead had expanded several times. Its original dilapidated appearance was no longer there. Although it was still made of wood, at least it looked like it was still there. Creak. Creak. Suddenly, the Gate of the Dead opened, and a strange aura of the netherworld spread out. The souls that were originally floating outside seemed to be attracted by something and began to walk into the Gate of the Dead and set foot on the road to the underworld. The road to the underworld was now 7 or 8 miles long. It was not crowded at all for 1,000 or 2,000 souls to walk through. Ling Shiqi curiously followed behind. He wanted to see what would happen to these souls after they walked through the road to the underworld. However, he was a little disappointed not long after, because these souls all stopped at the end of the road to the underworld. They did not walk onto the Bridge of Helplessness, just like before when they stopped outside the gate of the dead. Leng Shiqi suddenly thought of something. He thought to himself, how far these souls can walk seems to be related to the level of the mansion of the dead. Thinking of this, he went directly to the end of the mansion of the dead, which was in front of the gate of the Fengdu necropolis. The gate was still tightly shut. When he came here, he saw the conditions for the mansion of the dead to continue upgrading. Current level of the mansion of the dead, Tier 1. Conditions for upgrading the mansion of the dead, 1. Collect 1,000 souls. 178310000, 2. 10,000 system coins. Conditions for upgrading the mansion of the dead have been met. Would you like to spend 10,000 system coins to upgrade the mansion of the dead? Chapter 613. Seeing this system information, Leng Shiqi was secretly delighted. He did not know that he had unintentionally completed the requirements to continue upgrading the mansion of the dead. However, upgrading the mansion of the dead required him to spend another 10,000 system coins. This made his heart ache a little because he had already spent 5,000 system coins when he first upgraded the mansion of the dead. Now, he only had a little more than 10,000 system coins left. He could not help but sigh. Although it was now easier to obtain system coins, there were still too many things that he needed to spend them on. However, he still needed to upgrade the mansion of the dead. He immediately chose yes. His system coins were instantly emptied. The mansion of the dead continued to expand once again. It only stopped when it was dozens of miles wide. It was already comparable to the size of a city. All the buildings had also become brick structures. The surroundings were also emitting traces of black gas. The air was also filled with a faint aura of death. There were also more than 1,000 souls slowly floating around. If a normal person were to enter this place, they would definitely be scared witless. At this time, the souls continued to move forward as Leng Shiqi had previously guessed. They stepped onto the Naraka bridge in front of them. At this moment, the Naraka bridge was no longer the tattered little wooden bridge from before. Instead, it was a gray stone bridge covered in fog. At the end of the Naraka bridge, there was a small muddy pool. It was this small pool that attracted all the souls. They subconsciously cupped a handful of the pool water and drank it. After drinking the pool water, the souls would become thinner. It could also be said that they would become purer. Leng Shiqi stood next to the small pool. Could this be the legendary Mengpo's soup? However, just as he was wondering, he suddenly realized that he had a slight connection with the souls that had drunk the pool water. It was as if as long as he willed it, he could disperse their souls and prevent them from entering the cycle of reincarnation. What surprised him even more was that a new option had appeared in the territory interface. It was called Ghost Slave. Drinking Mengpo's soup meant that you had cut off everything from your previous life. From then on, you would be under the control of Leng Shiqi, the master of the mansion of the dead. He could decide the fate of these souls at will. For example, he could turn souls into his own ghost slaves for his own use. With the current level of the underworld, the Leng Shiqi can only have 2 ghost slaves at most, and the strength of a ghost slave is closely related to its cultivation when it was alive. After learning about this, Leng Shiqi immediately found Li Zhangtao's ghost. He tapped his finger lightly and a black light entered Li Zhangtao's soul. Immediately, Li Zhangtao's body was surrounded by black gas, which formed a set of ragged clothes. There was a large word, slave, on his chest. His originally sluggish expression became somewhat ferocious. In the end, he walked up to Leng Shiqi with a pious expression and knelt down heavily. Greetings, Nether Lord. Leng Shiqi looked at this unparalleled unity of heaven and man expert who was now kneeling in front of him. He whispered, Li Zhangtao, if you are alive, I will end your life. If you are dead, you will still be a slave. I have no deep enmity with you, but unfortunately, you and I have our own masters, so you can't blame me. However, Li Zhangtao didn't seem to understand what Leng Shiqi was saying. He was still kneeling on the ground, motionless. Leng Shiqi said, Get up. Li Zhangtao stood up shakily. At this time, Leng Shiqi noticed that Li Zhangtao, who was now a ghost slave, was emitting an aura that was equivalent to a spirit cultivator in the spirit pulse realm. In terms of strength, it was greatly reduced. However, he also found some characteristics of ghost slaves from the system's information. Ghost slaves can also leave the underworld to carry out activities, but they can't be too far away from Ling Shiqi. Moreover, ghost slaves also have various strange abilities. For example, normal people can't see them with the naked eye. They can also possess other people's bodies. They are very similar to the ghosts in Ling Shiqi's ghost stories from his previous life. Ling Shiqi touched his chin. Although Li Zhongtao, this ghost slave, was not strong, he had some special abilities. If used well, it could have unexpected effects. At this time, the system's information popped up again. Ghost slave transformation successful. Please name the ghost slave. I still need a name? Ling Shiqi was stunned for a moment, but then he thought that Li Zhongtao was no longer Li Zhongtao after drinking Meng Po's soup. It was only right to change the name. He thought for a moment and said, then let's call him Li Gui. Naming successful. Li Gui seemed to have sensed it. He knelt on the ground again, as if he was grateful to Ling Shiqi for naming him. However, he seemed to be unable to speak. He could only make weak woo-woo sounds. Ling Shiqi gently waved his hand and a force pulled Li Gui up. Li Gui, when I'm not in the underworld, I'll leave this place to you to patrol. Don't let other ghosts cause trouble. When Li Gui heard this, his head immediately nodded like garlic. Next, Ling Shiqi walked directly to the gate of Fengdu City. He did not transform another ghost slave. Li Zhongtao, a master of the oneness of heaven and men realm, was turned into a ghost slave, so he only had the power of spiritual pulse realm left. Then, other masters of the gang's spirit realm would be even weaker, so they would not occupy a place of ghost slave. He walked to the gate of Fengdu City, where the conditions for the next upgrade of the underworld were displayed. The current level of the territory of the underworld, Tier 2. Conditions for the upgrade of the territory of the underworld, 1. Recruit 2 members of the underworld, February 2nd. 2. Collect 3,000 souls, 03000. 3. 20,000 system coins. Seeing the conditions for the upgrade of the underworld from Tier 2 to Tier 3, Ling Shiqi could not help but rub his head. First, he had to recruit 2 more members of the underworld. This was a little easier. He already had a preliminary candidate in mind. Moreover, he knew that after someone joined the underworld, he could control their life and death at any time. As a result, the range of people could be expanded. Therefore, the first condition was relatively simple. As for the second condition, it was a bit of a headache. Because he originally had more than 1,000 souls, but that did not count. Besides, if there were no disasters or difficulties, where could he get so many souls? Did he have to start a massacre himself? There was also the last condition. It was very simple and clear. It required 20,000 system coins. 20,000 system coins was naturally affordable for Ling Shiqi now. However, the underworld was only at Tier 2 now. He could also see that every time the underworld upgraded, the cost of the system coins would double. In the future, this would increase to an astronomical figure. He immediately felt that he had to tighten his wallet again. Fortunately, this should be a problem that he would have to consider for a long time. Now, the most important thing was to seize the time to fully recover his primordial spirit and mental strength so that he could maintain his peak condition. Thinking of this, he left the underworld and closed his eyes to adjust his breath. Chapter 6:14. A few days later, Ling Shiqi finally replenished his exhausted mental energy. During these few days, he had been recalling everything that had happened in the heavenly tomb. However, the more he thought about it, the more bizarre he felt and the more confused he became. Moreover, he didn't notice any changes in his body. Other than his cultivation being 1 level higher, there were no other changes. Although he didn't have any clues, he guessed that it might be related to the law of heaven and earth that the mysterious figures in the heavenly tomb spoke of. Unfortunately, the the law of heaven and earth was too far away from Ling Shiqi. He didn't have the qualifications to pry into it at all, so he didn't think about it anymore. He would just treat it as gaining 2 levels of cultivation in the heavenly tomb, which would save him a lot of cultivation time. Ling Shiqi walked out of the secret room and was about to find the Delta Origi. Who would have thought that he would meet He Feichen, who was in a hurry? "Sir, Steward Gao is here. It seems to be urgent," He Feichen quickly said. "He came personally?" Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows. Normally, if Eunuch Gao had something to say to him, he would summon him. Now that Eunuch Gao came personally, it meant that the matter was indeed urgent. Ling Shiqi used remnant wind lightning light steps and arrived at the meeting hall of Xingji Pavilion in a few breaths. Eunuch Gao was indeed sitting on the main seat. "Greetings, Master. No need to be so courteous. I came this time to tell you that I will bring you to participate in a grand event in a while," Eunuch Gao said solemnly. There was a hint of respect in his tone. Ling Shiqi asked doubtfully, "What grand event is it? Why does Master place so much importance on it?" Eunuch Gao said solemnly, "The 70th birthday banquet of the current emperor." "The 70th birthday banquet of the emperor?" Ling Shiqi couldn't help but raise his voice. He wasn't very surprised. Instead, he thought of many things in an instant. Everyone knew that the emperor of the Thunderfire dynasty, Lei Qingjun, didn't have much time left. All his thoughts were on making arrangements after his death so that the Thunderfire dynasty could continue to stabilize. How could he have the time to celebrate his 70th birthday? But Lei Qingjun still did it, so this matter was worth pondering. Ling Shiqi guessed that Lei Qingjun might want to use this birthday banquet as an opportunity to do something. Eunuch Gao nodded and said, "His Majesty's birthday banquet this time is a universal celebration. It is scheduled for half a year from now. At that time, all the upper echelons of the Thunderblaze dynasty, as well as the first-rate and top-notch sects, will enter the imperial capital to celebrate. Even the Starfall dynasty, the Northern Wei dynasty, and the 6 kingdoms of the western region would send envoys over." When the time came, the entire imperial capital would be filled with experts and influential figures from all over the world. In order to maintain the stability of the imperial city, we, the Dark Thunder Guards, have a great responsibility. Everyone who enters the imperial city, regardless of their status or cultivation, must have their backgrounds thoroughly investigated. Absolutely do not allow anyone of unknown origin to enter. Hearing this, Ling Shiqi's expression also became serious. When that time came, there would probably be tens of thousands of people pouring into the imperial capital. Moreover, each of them was either holding a powerful fist or had a profound cultivation base. How could it be easy to investigate all of them? The most troublesome ones were the people from the Starfall dynasty and the Northern Wei dynasty. They were one of the 3 dynasties alongside the Thunderblaze dynasty, and they were constantly at war with each other. How could they behave themselves when they came to celebrate? Ling Shiqi could foresee that in the future, the imperial capital would truly become a turbulent undercurrent. The slightest carelessness would cause it to turn into ashes. But there's no need to worry too much. The Dark Thunder Guards will only be in charge of screening and monitoring in the dark. There will still be patrolling guards in the front. That's also a hot potato. Eunuch Gao sighed and said, "Moreover, His Majesty's birthday banquet is not a place where anyone can come as they wish. The invitations have already been sent out. We only need to investigate according to the list of names on the invitations." Ling Shiqi thought to himself that it would be much simpler in this way. However, it would require a large number of people to spread out such a large number of people. The people in the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards were far from enough. Eunuch Gao naturally understood this. He said, "All the sects or forces on the invitations will be carefully investigated by the local Dark Thunder Guards. However, the most troublesome ones are the people from the other 2 dynasties and the 6 countries of the western region. Especially this time, the envoys from the Starfall dynasty and the 6 countries of the western region will enter the Thunderblaze dynasty from the Western Wilderness Prefecture. It can be said that the Western Wilderness Prefecture is the most important place. The inspector of the Western Wilderness Prefecture, Yu Ruifeng, can't take care of it all. The day before yesterday, he asked me for more people. Those people in my family are all good at fighting for power and profit. However, only you can do this. In addition, you were born in the Dark Thunder Guards of the Western Wilderness Prefecture, so you are the most suitable person to go there. As long as you can smoothly bring the envoys from the 6 countries of the Western region and the Starfall dynasty to the imperial capital, it will be a great merit. Even if you take the position of deputy director with the cultivation of Gang's spirit realm, no one will dare to say anything. Leng Shiqi understood that eunuch Gao was asking him to make a merit. However, this merit was not so easy to get. Although the 6 countries of the Western region were called the 6 countries of the Western region, in fact, these 6 small countries were sandwiched between the Thunderblaze dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. The total area of the 6 countries was equivalent to the size of 5 or 6 prefectures. They existed completely as a buffer zone between the 2 dynasties. Because of their small size, these 6 countries often attacked each other. The hatred between them had been accumulated for many years. It could be imagined that it was impossible for the envoys of the 6 countries to stay together. This matter alone was enough to give people a headache, not to mention that the Starfall dynasty would also send people here. Among the 3 dynasties in the world, the Starfall dynasty was the most powerful, had the most profound foundation, and had the most vast territory. The Starfall dynasty had been passed down for thousands of years, more than twice as long as the Thunderblaze dynasty. Its national strength was very strong and it had always been ambitious. From the name of the dynasty, it could be seen that the Starfall dynasty had the ambition to swallow the whole Starfall continent. Lei Qingjun was critically ill, but he wanted to hold a birthday banquet. The Starfall dynasty naturally came with the intention of sounding him out. They wanted to see how long Lei Qingjun could hold on. Let's see who might take over his position. Most importantly, it was extremely likely that the Starfall dynasty would secretly plant a few spies in the Thunderblaze dynasty during this process, and Leng Shiqi had to be on guard against all of this. So, this mission was absolutely not easy. However, what eunuch Gao said was right. If Leng Shiqi could complete this mission perfectly, he would be rewarded with merits and could be promoted to one of the 36 deputy directors of the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters. He would become a powerful figure. So he said loudly, "I will do my best and will never disgrace you, but the manpower, in terms of manpower, you can take away all the guards under your command. I have already informed you, Ruifeng. All the Dark Thunder Guards in the Western Desert Province are at your disposal. In addition, I have also specially assigned an assistant to you." Speaking until here, eunuch Gao clapped his hands and a figure walked out. Leng Shiqi turned to look and felt that the figure was a little familiar. Chapter 6:15. The person who came looked like a young man. His face was pale, and he looked a little like eunuch Gao. Leng Shiqi knew that this person must be someone from the palace. He suddenly remembered that when he first came to the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guard to meet eunuch Gao, it was this person who was talking to eunuch Gao. At that time, the two of them just met face to face and didn't even speak a word. Eunuch Gao pointed to the man and said, "He is the most outstanding one among my many adopted sons. His name is Gao Yi and he is at the peak of Gang's spirit realm. He will go to the Western Wilderness Prefecture with you this time." Gao Yi smiled, but his smile looked a bit fake. "I often hear my adoptive father mention Brother Lu. Now I see you with my own eyes. No wonder you are the head of the elite society." Leng Shiqi sneered secretly. It seemed that Gao Yi didn't remember that they had met once. Presumably, Gao Yi didn't take him seriously at that time. He made an obeisance and said a few polite words. Eunuch Gao continued, "This mission is headed by Lu Xingji. Gao Yi, you have to assist him wholeheartedly. In addition, your most important task is to find out the identity and background of all the people who enter the territory. Don't get into conflicts with the delegation easily. Even if you find something fishy, don't be impulsive. It's better to leave it to the people who receive the delegation, or let the discipline department of the Western Wilderness Prefecture do it. Do you understand?" Leng Shiqi and Gao Yi's hearts were as clear as a mirror. How could they not understand eunuch Gao's meaning? Once you make a move against the envoys of the 6 kingdoms of the Western region or the Starfall dynasty, no matter what the reason is, then you will naturally have to bear all the consequences. Therefore, they couldn't be blamed easily. They just needed to take credit. I understand. Good. You all go to prepare. Tomorrow we will set off for the Western Wilderness Prefecture. Eunuch Gao left in a hurry. It seemed that the birthday banquet made him very busy. After Eunuch Gao left, Gao Yi stopped smiling and said, I often hear the name of Brother Lu in the palace. As the head of the elite society, you shocked the Dark Thunder Guards and defeated the Extermination Thunder Alliance. I really admire you for becoming the eunuch in such a short time. Ling Shiqi could hear a bit of jealousy in his tone. He laughed in his heart. This Gao Iran was two-faced. It was really the style of someone in the palace. Since Eunuch Gao sent him in, as long as he behaved himself, Ling Shiqi didn't want to pay much attention to him. However, Gao Yi didn't seem to think that way. A faint cold underworld chi seeped out of his body as he said, I've long heard that Brother Lu's strength is extraordinary. I'm itching to learn from you. Ling Shiqi's eyes narrowed. He could see that Gao Yi's cultivation technique was also the Cold Nether Treasure Manual. It was no wonder that people who knew that he had cultivated this technique thought that he was also someone from the palace. Gao Yi snorted lightly, and a bone-piercing cold nether energy appeared. Incomparably sharp icicles carrying traces of nether energy shot out from Gao Yi, rapidly spreading out. In the blink of an eye, Xingji Pavilion had become a dead zone. Ling Shiqi also released a dense amount of cold nether energy and used the same spiritual technique. This was the spiritual technique of the Cold Nether Treasure Book, Cold Nether Hell. The two cold nether hells collided with each other. Endless cold energy and nether energy wreaked havoc, especially at the intersection. The ground cracked, and the sky darkened. Ling Shiqi's cold nether hell was gradually suppressing Gao Yi. Gao Yi's eyes suddenly became gloomy. His cultivation was clearly several levels higher than Ling Shiqi's. He had also cultivated the cold nether hell for a long time and had already reached the large success stage. He didn't understand. What was the difference between him and Ling Shiqi? Gao Yi didn't know that Ling Shiqi's cold nether hell was at the great perfection stage. Moreover, Ling Shiqi cultivated the heavenly cycle star god art, which was a fusion of many high-level cultivation methods. His foundation was not weaker than Gao Yi's. Adding on the strength of his body, it was easy for him to suppress Gao Yi. However, he didn't just want to suppress him. Then, Ling Shiqi's mind moved. The dark cold nether hell was dyed with layers of demonic crimson. All of the ice instantly turned into crimson ice crystals. Ling Shiqi's cold nether hell's strength immediately increased. It rushed into Gao Yi's cold nether hell like a whale and tore a huge hole in it. This was the result of Ling Shiqi fusing the crimson ice crystal technique into the cold nether hell, crimson nether hell. Ling Shiqi hadn't used this technique since fusing it. It was a good time to test it out on Gao Yi. It seemed that the power was quite good. What? Gao Yi exclaimed. He immediately sent out another palm. Cold nether energy howled and chilling wind blew. Several palm shadows fell and barely blocked Ling Shiqi's attack. However, he was forced back more than 10 steps. Ling Shiqi didn't continue to attack. Instead, he looked at Gao Yi quietly. Gao Yi also stopped, but his face didn't look good. However, he still smiled and said, Brother Lu's strength is really tyrannical. I admire you. By the way, I'm going to the Western Wilderness Prefecture to get some credit. I'll listen to your arrangements. If there's anything you need me to do, just tell me. After a simple fight, Gao Yi, a spirit cultivator at the peak of Spirit Astral Realm, was completely suppressed by Ling Shiqi. Although they were not fighting to the death, Gao Yi could see from this that if Ling Shiqi wanted to kill him, it didn't seem to be particularly difficult. Therefore, he completely put away his thoughts. I don't dare. Ling Shiqi quickly waved his hand and said, You and I are both working for Master. We help each other, we help each other. After all, Gao Yi was still the adopted son of eunuch Gao. Ling Shiqi had to give him some face. At the same time, he also tried his current strength in the fight with Gao Yi. After he broke through the middle stage of spirit astral realm, all his strength became stronger. Even if he faced the peak of spirit astral realm, he could completely dominate. Then he sent Gao Yi out while talking and laughing. Ling Shiqi didn't believe that Gao Yi's purpose was so simple, but he was too lazy to care too much. As long as he didn't mess up his business, it was fine. He asked He Feichen to gather all the guards. Soon, all the 5 War Thunder guards were gathered. Including Feng Sha Mo and himself, Ling Shiqi now had the high-end fighting strength of 7 spirit astral realm cultivators. There were also dozens of spirit cultivators of spirit astral realm. This kind of fighting strength was far beyond the second-rate forces, and could even compete with the first-rate forces. Ling Shiqi told everyone about the mission as quickly as possible. After everyone heard it, the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. If they were asked to fight purely with the enemy, they were very good at it. But this time, their goal was the envoys of the 6 countries of the Western region and the Starfall dynasty. Those people couldn't be touched casually, otherwise, a little carelessness would lead to a disaster. Ling Shiqi looked at everyone's expression and said coldly, "What, are you afraid? The mission this time is indeed not simple. I have always believed in one sentence, and that is, difficulties and opportunities coexist. Just like the last time when I wiped out the Thunder Alliance, the whole Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters didn't believe that I could complete it, but what was the result? I not only completed it, but also won a great victory and directly sat in the position of the Imperial Supervisor. I won't say much nonsense. If you want to have a meteoric rise, if you want to climb up, then rush forward with me. In addition, my subordinates never raise trash. If anyone thinks they are trash, they can leave now. I will never stop them." Chapter 6:16. When everyone heard the first half of the speech, their blood was boiling, but when they heard the last sentence, they all shivered. Even though they had not been in contact with Ling Shiqi for a long time, they were very clear about his misdeeds. If anyone really dared to walk out now, only a corpse would be left. Everyone immediately shouted in unison, "This subordinate will do his best to share Sir's worries." Ling Shiqi waved his hand and ordered, "Very good, I will give you half a day to prepare. Tomorrow, you will directly teleport to the Western Desolate Province." Everyone retreated one after another. Ling Shiqi also planned to prepare, but a voice came from outside. "Greetings, Miss Lian Yi. Congratulations, Miss Lian Ye's cultivation has improved again. Miss Lian Yi is here to see Sir Lu, right? Please come in." Ling Shiqi's footsteps paused. He turned to look outside and saw Lian Yi walking over. He could not help but think, what is she doing here again? Nothing good. He still remembered that last time, in order to help Lian Yi get rid of the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing, he even did something like assassinating a prince. What was she planning this time? However, Lian Yi was after all the adopted daughter of the Dark Thunder Guard's commander, Heavenly Sovereign Black Flame. For this relationship, he should still welcome her. "Miss Lian Yi, long time no see." "It hasn't been long. You don't seem to want to see me?" Lian Yi narrowed her eyes. Ling Shiqi immediately shook his head and said, "What are you saying? Miss Lian Yi, may I know why you have come here?" "Boring." Lian Yi curled her lips and said, "I came to thank you. Last time, when you went to assassinate Lei Haoqing, I did not expect that it would cause a series of disturbances. Fortunately, it did not implicate you. However, the effect was quite good. Since then, Lei Haoqing has been holed up and has not caused any trouble for me. As for the shield you mentioned, there is no need for that. This is what I should do. There is no need to thank me. Actually, there is absolutely no need for me. It is just that father insisted that I come." Lian Yi gave Ling Shiqi a strange look and continued, "Father, he wants to see you." "What?" Ling Shiqi was shocked. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame wanted to see him? In Leng Shiqi's impression, the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Lord He Yen, was extremely mysterious. Not to mention him, even the people who had been in the Dark Thunder Guards headquarters for several years had never seen Heavenly Lord He Yen appear. But now, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame actually wanted to see him? For a time, all sorts of thoughts flashed through Leng Shiqi's mind. He couldn't think of why Empyrean Black Flame wanted to see him, but it shouldn't be anything bad. I also find it very strange. Foster father rarely takes the initiative to meet people. You can be considered to have hit the jackpot. Lian Yi said sourly. Leng Shiqi smiled. That's all thanks to Miss Lian Ye's recommendation. May I know where the Grand Commander is and when can we go see him? I don't know where Foster father is, but you can see him right now. Lian Yi suddenly said something that didn't make sense. Soon after, a black flame bloomed in her palm. Suddenly, the world changed. Leng Shiqi instantly arrived in a black flame hell. In the sky, a giant face slowly appeared. A face completely composed of countless black flames condensed. When the giant eyes opened, Leng Shiqi felt a terrifying pressure fall on him like Mount Tai. Leng Shiqi's face immediately paled. All the muscles in his body seemed to be squeezed to the point of bursting. He almost couldn't stand still. He let out a low shout and instantly activated the wild evil demon blood beast body. An ancient, evil, and ominous aura filled the air. At the same time, he used the throbbing pulse of the earth. The powerful anti-gravity force propped up a curtain of light to make him feel better. Suddenly, the pressure disappeared without a trace, and a deep voice rang out, "You do have some skills." Leng Shiqi cupped his fists towards the sky and said, "Greetings, Grand Commander." Heavenly Sage He Yen suddenly asked, "Did you kill Li Zhangtao?" Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's heart tightened. He didn't know what the relationship between Heavenly Sage He Yen and the Li family was, and he couldn't hear anything from the other's tone. However, he still raised his head and said, "Yes." "Did you also kill Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi?" "Yes." There were very few people who knew about the death of the Li brothers. It seemed that Li Jueqing might have sent a message to Heavenly Sage He Yen. Leng Shiqi didn't deny it. He thought that Heavenly Sage He Yen would blame him, but unexpectedly, Heavenly Sage He Yen said 3 words. "Good job." Leng Shiqi, hearing these 3 words, Leng Shiqi instantly thought of many things. He was now sure that even the Grand Commander didn't want the Li family to continue taking root in the Dark Thunder Guard. Especially in this turbulent time, once the new emperor ascended the throne, the Li family would have the opportunity to seize more positions. At that time, it would be even more difficult to solve this problem. Leng Shiqi killed Li Zhangtao in Ningyang County and took away the Li family's money tree. It could be said that he cut off one of the Li family's arms. He also killed the Li brothers in the Heavenly Tomb, which could be considered as breaking the Li family's foundation. Right now, the Li clan had Li Jueqing and several experts who were at the unity of heaven and man realm supporting them. The youngest generation also had good potential. However, the problem was that when Li Jueqing's generation had either aged or died, the younger generation had yet to grow to the point where they could support the Li clan. Then, at that time, the Li family would fall into an extremely dangerous situation where there was a shortage of manpower. Therefore, although Leng Shiqi only killed 3 people from the Li family, these 3 people were very important to the Li family. Leng Shiqi himself didn't expect that he only wanted to complete Eunuch Gao's mission and avenge himself. In the end, he went along with the Grand Commander's wishes. It could be said that he unintentionally planted a willow tree and it became a shade. Heavenly Sage He Yen reminded him, however, Li Jueqing is not magnanimous. You have to be careful. Leng Shiqi had already experienced Li Jueqing's magnanimity. However, Heavenly Sage He Yen did remind him that his trip to the Western Desolate County was not a secret. Li Jueqing would naturally know. If Leng Shiqi stayed in the imperial capital, Li Jueqing might not be able to kill him. However, if he left the imperial capital and went to the borderlands, where the emperor was far away, Li Jueqing would very likely secretly attack him. Therefore, he had always been very vigilant. Then again, did Heavenly Sage He Yan want to see him just to ask him this? There must be something else. Sure enough, Heavenly Sage He Yan continued, your trip to the Western Desolate County is not only to smoothly welcome the envoys of the Starfall dynasty and the 6 kingdoms of the Western region. There is also an even more important mission. At the end, Heavenly Sage He Yan's tone was a bit heavy. This made Leng Shiqi feel that the mission was definitely not simple. Please tell me, Grand Commander. You also need to secretly sow discord between the 6 kingdoms of the Western region and the Starfall dynasty, especially between the Golden Tribe and the Tuoba Kingdom. In addition, that girl Lian Yi will go with you. The 6 kingdoms of the Western region were the Zhu Lu Kingdom, the Bei Lu Kingdom, the Jushur Kingdom, the Golden Tribe, and the Tuoba Kingdom. These 6 small kingdoms constantly had friction with each other, and they were also on good terms with the Thunderblaze dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. Due to their geographical location, the Zhu Lu Kingdom and the Bei Lu Kingdom were leaning towards the Thunderblaze dynasty, while the Golden Tribe and the Tuoba Kingdom were on good terms with the Starfall dynasty. As for the Jushur Kingdom and the Great Yuezhi Kingdom, they were located in the center of the 6 kingdoms of the Western region. They were also the 2 strongest kingdoms. Leng Shiqi listened to Heavenly Sage He Yan's words. It seemed that he wanted the Golden Tribe, the Tuoba Kingdom, and the Starfall dynasty to become enemies. If he could really do this, the Starfall dynasty would definitely be flustered for a while. Perhaps they would not have so much time to deal with the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, the problem was that instigating the relationship between the 3 parties conflicted with Leng Shiqi's mission. The mission given to him by Eunuch Gao was to investigate the innocence of the people who came to celebrate the birthday, and secretly protect the diplomatic group as they entered the imperial capital. However, if Leng Shiqi instigated the relationship between the 3 parties, it would be hard to avoid some trouble. At that time, it would be easier said than done to smoothly enter the imperial capital. This mission was not simple. However, what made Leng Shiqi puzzled was, why would Lian Yi follow him? It was not that Leng Shiqi looked down on her, but that Lian Ye's cultivation was still at the early stage of the spirit aperture realm. Any of the War Thunder Guards under him had a higher cultivation than her, so there was no need for her to fight. As for ability and strategy, Leng Shiqi admitted that Lian Yi was indeed more mature than before. However, compared to those experienced Dark Thunder Guards, she was still far from being comparable. Bringing Lian Yi with him was the same as bringing a burden. Of course, he could not say this out loud. No matter how difficult it was in his heart, he still said, Commander, please be at ease. This subordinate will definitely complete the mission. Since the commander had personally spoken, there was no reason for him to refuse. Moreover, whether it was strength or influence, he had already formed his wings. It was not impossible for him to complete the mission. I didn't expect you to agree so easily. Heavenly Sage He Yan said, I will be frank. Lian Yi will go with you to accumulate some merits. At this moment, Leng Shiqi bitterly smiled in his heart. Eunuch Gao and the commander were both stuffing people with him to gain merits. Weren't they too confident in him? From another point of view, Lian Yi was the commander's adopted daughter, yet she still wanted to accumulate merits. It could be seen that the commander also attached great importance to the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards. Otherwise, he could have just directly arranged a position for Lian Yi. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Heavenly Sage He Yan continued, I see that you have a heavenly strange flame in your body. You know the power of heavenly variance the best. If you can successfully return from the Western Desolate Province, I can give you a piece of information. A piece of information that records the location of heavenly variance. Whoosh! Leng Shiqi suddenly raised his head, his eyes revealing undisguised joy. He was well aware of the power of heavenly variance. His crimson gold earth dragon flame had yet to meet a match. If he could obtain another heavenly variant, no matter what attribute it was, it would definitely cause his strength to explosively rise once more. However, before Leng Shiqi could speak, the world of black flames suddenly began to disperse. Heavenly Sage He Yan said, the time has come. I await your good news. Immediately after, the scene in front of Lang Shiqi changed, and he once again saw the familiar Xingji pavilion. He said to Lian Yi, who was still waiting on the side, "Miss Lian Yi, prepare to go to the Western Desolate Province." Chapter 617. West Wilderness Prefecture, Hangzhou City. At this moment, there were 3 people wearing the same clothes standing in front of the gate of Dark Thunder residence. Everyone had a worried look on their faces. Their cultivation was not weak. The leader was at the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and the 2 behind him were at the late stage of Spirit Aperture Realm. At this moment, a person behind him said, "Elder G, are you sure it's here?" Elder G nodded solemnly. "I didn't want to believe it at first, but I've confirmed it several times. It can't be wrong. But, this is Dark Thunder Guard. It's not good for the sect to offend Dark Thunder Guard rashly." "I know." Elder G growled, "but the Wind Thunder Divine Luck Stone is the sect's most valuable treasure. Without this item, those disciples will not be able to cultivate the highest grade of cultivation technique. If this continues, the Wind Thunder Tower will be completely destroyed in a few decades." It turned out that the leader was Ji Dong, the elder of Wind Thunder Tower, a second-rate sect in West Wilderness Prefecture. After Lang Shiqi and 9 Leave joined hands to steal the Wind Thunder Godly Luck Stone, Ji Dong had been tracking the whereabouts of the Wind Thunder Godly Luck Stone. Later, when the array in Wind Thunder Tower to sense the Godly Luck Stone collapsed, Ji Dong thought that the Godly Luck Stone might have been destroyed. But he didn't give up, or rather, he still had a trace of hope in his heart. So, for a long time, he set up a small array and kept looking for the place where the Godly Luck Stone disappeared. Until a few days ago, he finally found it. That was Hangzhou City's Dark Thunder residence. At first, Ji Dong thought that he had found the wrong place. But after many confirmations, the last breath of the Godly Luck Stone had indeed disappeared here. Ji Dong also remembered that Lu Xingji, the great supervisor of North Prefecture, also participated in the Demon Extermination Assembly and went to the Treasure Pavilion. He was more or less suspicious. If it was somewhere else, Ji Dong would have rushed in directly. But this was Dark Thunder Guard. Even Wind Thunder Tower didn't dare to provoke Dark Thunder Guard. After all, no one wanted to be watched in secret every day, which made them unable to eat or sleep well. They were afraid that they would be caught if they made a mistake. However, the Godly Luck Stone was too important to Wind Thunder Tower. It could even affect the rise and fall of the sect. He had to come and ask clearly. After struggling for a while, Ji Dong still decided to go in and ask, which led to the current scene. The 2 guards in front of Dark Thunder Manor saw Ji Dong and the other standing there for a long time. Finally, they couldn't help but ask, "Who are you people? Why are you loitering in front of Dark Thunder Manor?" Ji Dong tried his best to calm himself down. He smiled and said, "I am Elder Ji Dong of the Wind and Thunder Tower. I am here to seek an audience with the great supervisor, Lord Lu. May I trouble you to inform him?" When the 2 guards heard this, they silently looked at each other. One of them said, "Lord Lu is not in the residence. Please go back. The 2 of you, this old man has specifically asked around. Lord Lu hasn't shown his face for a long time. I'm guessing that he must be in his residence." Ji Dong was still smiling as he said, "Please go in and report that this old man indeed has an extremely important matter to discuss with Lord Lu." The guard immediately said coldly, "If he's not here, then he's not here. There's no need for us to lie to you." Ji Dong knew that if he didn't use some tricks today, he wouldn't be able to enter the gate. Suddenly, the majestic Wind and Thunder spiritual gang rose around him with extraordinary momentum. The 2 guards were only in the spirit transformation realm. They were directly forced to retreat by the spiritual gang. The 2 of them were suppressed by the horrible momentum and couldn't even call for help. Right at this moment, a strand of black shadow flashed by swiftly. It was a sword light, and it was like a venomous snake that was hidden in the darkness. Ji Dong also saw the sword light. A trace of disdain flashed in his heart. The sword light was extremely fast, but it was obviously not in the gang's spirit realm. It posed no threat to him. However, at the next moment, his face suddenly changed, because the black shadow tore apart the wind and thunder spiritual gang around him. Although Ji Dong didn't use his full strength and just released his momentum to force Lu Xingji out, spiritual gang was spiritual gang after all. How could it be broken by someone in the spiritual aperture realm? He turned over his palm. Suddenly, the wind and thunder roared. The violent spiritual gang overflowed and slapped the black shadow away fiercely. However, the black shadow continuously dissipated the force in the air and finally landed steadily. He was not hurt by Ji Dong. And this person was Qin Jianchen. Stop. An old voice came. Guan Feihong rushed out with Qiu Cheng, Xiao Qian, and the others. They saw the scene of Qin Jianchen being slapped away, and they were all furious. Guan Feihong stared at Ji Dong. He recognized Ji Dong's identity. He cupped his fist and said, "So it's Elder Ji." The Wind and Thunder Tower is located in the North region, but Elder Ji came to my Dark Thunder Mansion to hurt people. Do you not put the Dark Thunder Guards in your eyes? The threat in his words was very obvious. The Wind and Thunder Tower was under the supervision of the Dark Thunder Mansion in Hangzhou City. Ji Dong dared to come to the Dark Thunder Mansion to make a move. Did he eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts? Ji Dong withdrew his spiritual gang and said, "I don't mean anything else. I just want to see Lord Lu." Guan Feihong frowned. Only they knew that Leng Shiqi had entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. Outsiders didn't know about this matter. Because Leng Shiqi was still the supervisor of the North region, in the eyes of those spirit cultivation sects, Leng Shiqi might be in seclusion and didn't show up. In fact, Leng Shiqi's prestige was not small. He was the most famous in the Shantai region, and even in the imperial capital. But the West Wilderness region was located in the western border, which was too far away. If one didn't specifically inquire about Leng Shiqi, one wouldn't know. So Guan Feihong said, "Lord Lu is indeed not here." But Ji Dong thought that Guan Feihong was perfunctory. His spiritual gang surged around him, and his eyes became cold. "If I don't see Lu Xingji today, I won't give up." Facing the pressure of a spiritual gang realm master, Guan Feihong was not afraid at all. He said in a low voice, "Elder Ji, you should think about the consequences of offending the Dark Thunder Guards. Can your Wind and Thunder Tower bear the consequences?" "I can't care so much. I have to." However, before he could finish his sentence, 5 auras that were no weaker than Ji Dong's suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Everyone quickly turned around and saw hundreds of figures coming quickly. The leaders were all in the spiritual gang realm. Behind them, there were dozens of spiritual aperture realm cultivators and hundreds of spiritual pulse realm cultivators. Everyone was shocked. When did so many strong cultivators appear in Hangzhou City? These people could easily annihilate a second-rate sect. But immediately, Guan Feihong and Ji Dong's expressions changed greatly. Guan Feihong was surprised and happy, while Ji Dong's face was black. Because when the group of experts came closer, they saw that they were wearing the clothes of the Dark Thunder Guards. Even though their clothes were slightly different from Guan Feihong and Qin Jianchen, they were still very similar. In the Thunder Flame dynasty, only the Dark Lightning Guards would wear this kind of clothing. Ji Dong was stunned. He didn't understand where these experts came from. Even if all the Dark Thunder Guards in the West Wilderness region were gathered together, there might not be so many. He didn't understand, but he knew that he was in danger. The people who came here were naturally the 5 War Thunder Guards under Leng Shiqi, as well as many secret Thunder Guards who were in charge of intelligence investigation. They didn't expect that they would encounter someone who came to trouble the Dark Thunder Guards as soon as they arrived in Hangzhou City. Elder Huang and the other spiritual gang realm cultivators all snorted and instantly blocked Ji Dong with various spiritual gang realms. Their eyes were cold. The rest of the hundreds of experts also surrounded the 3 of them, eyeing them covetously. The 2 spiritual aperture realm disciples of the Wind Thunder Tower had never seen such a scene before. They were scared out of their wits. At this moment, a slight sound of footsteps was heard, and all the Dark Thunder Guards silently opened up a path, and a figure walked towards them. This person was wearing a purple cloak and a feathered official hat. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Seeing this person's face, Guan Feihong, Qiu Cheng, Xiao Qian and the others' pupils shrank and then turned into boundless joy. When this person stood still, the Dark Thunder Guards of Hangzhou City and the Dark Thunder Guards of the imperial capital all knelt down and shouted, "Greetings, my lord." Chapter 618. In front of the gate of the Dark Thunder Mansion, many people knelt down in an instant, leaving only 4 people standing. Ji Dong looked at this scene in a daze. Wasn't the person standing in front of him Lu Xingji whom he had to see? He was really not in the mansion. Lu Xingji, you. As soon as Ji Dong opened his mouth, several inspectors of Gang Spirit Realm took action at the same time. All kinds of Gang Spirit Realm burst out and pressed on Ji Dong. Ji Dong was shocked and quickly resisted, but he was a spiritual caster. If he was well prepared, his combat power would be infinite. But how could he resist the sudden attack of 5 masters of Gang Spirit Realm? He was injured by several people in an instant, and a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. One of the inspectors shouted, "How dare you call His Excellency's name directly? How dare you? Don't be so irritable. Elder Ji and I are old acquaintances." But Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said very calmly, "Elder Ji, you insist on seeing me. What is the matter?" Ji Dong forcibly suppressed the spiritual power that was about to go berserk in his body. Seeing Leng Shiqi's attitude seemed to be easy to talk to, he cupped his hands and said, "Lord Lu, I'll be frank. My Wind and Thunder Tower's most precious treasure, the Wind and Thunder Stone, has been stolen. You should know this." Leng Shiqi nodded and did not deny it, but he had already guessed Ji Dong's intention. "In that case, it's easy to say. I perceived through the formation that the Wind and Thunder Stone finally disappeared in the Dark Thunder Mansion. Lord Lu, please tell me the truth. Is the Wind and Thunder Stone in your hands?" After he finished speaking, he looked straight at Leng Shiqi, as if he wanted to see something from Leng Shiqi's expression. However, what he never expected was that Leng Shiqi suddenly took action. Suddenly, the strange Nirvana wind burst out, and a terrible storm suddenly formed, sending out visible ripples. Even the spiritual power of heaven and earth was stirred up. Whirlwind. Ji Dong didn't expect that Leng Shiqi would suddenly take action. What shocked him even more was that Leng Shiqi's power was even stronger than that of several Gang Spirit Realm masters just now. However, he also felt a trace of the Wind and Thunder God's luck stone from the Leng Shiqi's Nirvana remnant wind. The Wind Thunder Divine Luck Stone was indeed obtained by him. Ji Dong didn't have time to form a seal, but he tapped the space between his eyebrows. Without a wang sound, a fierce wind suddenly appeared, and an astral wind spiritual array appeared out of thin air, protecting him firmly within. The power of Nirvana in the Nirvana remnant wind was constantly eroding the power of the formation. At the same time, Leng Shiqi raised his hand. Dark clouds covered the sky and thunder exploded. An incomparably gigantic lightning hand descended, and its might seemed as if it wanted to kill Ji Dong directly. Amethyst lightning hand. Ji Dong's eyes widened. It was already his limit to block the Nirvana remnant wind. How could he block the sky-covering thunder hand? In a hurry, he had to take out a flying shuttle. Unfortunately, before he had time to use it, Leng Shiqi pointed out a finger. Starlight flashed, and the blood thunder star-shattering finger directly smashed the flying shuttle. Ji Dong suddenly felt desperate. Boom! With a loud noise, the giant lightning hand smashed Ji Dong's formation and smashed him into a pile of meat paste. Ji Dong, who had cultivated the power of wind and thunder for decades, finally died in the hands of the power of wind and thunder, which was a kind of irony. As for the 2 disciples of spiritual aperture realm he brought, they had already been killed by several inspectors. Guan Feihong and the others had been in a state of confusion. They had been enjoying a lot of resources these days, so their cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Guan Feihong and Xiao Cheng were both in spiritual aperture realm, and Xiao Qian was in the late stage of spiritual pulse realm. But Ji Dong, a master of Gang's spirit realm, was still in existence that they had to look up to. Even Qin Jianchen, who had strong fighting capacity, could not get close to Ji Dong, which showed that Ji Dong was not weak. However, an expert of this level was killed by Leng Shiqi in less than 3 moves. Then, how strong was Leng Shiqi? After more than a year, Leng Shiqi's strength had completely exceeded their imagination. At this time, a person beside Leng Shiqi suddenly asked for orders. "How dare the Wind and Thunder Tower offend your excellency? It is really audacious. Inspector Gao Ting of the 32 Guards, please kill the Wind and Thunder Tower." He Feichen was secretly annoyed. In fact, he also thought that this was a good opportunity to show off, but his mouth was one step too slow. Leng Shiqi did not speak. He just waved his hand gently, as if he was driving away a fly beside him. Gao Ting was immediately overjoyed and hurriedly left with the 32 guards. Looking at Guan Feihong and the others who were still in a daze, Leng Shiqi could not help laughing. He was not as arrogant and domineering as when he killed a master of Gang's spirit realm. "What? Don't you want to let me in?" Guan Feihong came to his senses and hurriedly led Leng Shiqi and the others in. "Your Excellency, long time no see. You are finally back. I also have an important task this time. The Dark Thunder Guards in North County need to be mobilized. Later, you go and tell all the Dark Thunder Guards to gather in Hanzhou City," Leng Shiqi said as he walked. "Yes, Your Excellency." "Has anything happened in Dark Thunder Mansion during this time?" The reason why Leng Shiqi did not go directly to West Wilderness City but came to Hanzhou City first was that he wanted to see if everything was normal here. After all, half of the people here were killers of the blood-robed pavilion. After such a long time, he was afraid that someone would reveal some flaws. Guan Feihong thought for a moment and said, "Your Excellency, although you haven't shown up for a long time, North County has been peaceful recently and there has been no trouble. The only tricky thing is that there are no masters of Gang's spirit realm in the Dark Thunder Guards in North County, so some things can't be done smoothly." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi knew that there was no accident, which made him feel a little relieved. He said, "Don't worry, I will pay attention to this matter." While talking, they walked into the meeting hall. Leng Shiqi sat on the jade chair, and several masters of Gang's spirit realm stood on both sides. However, Feng Shamo and Sulwan were not here. After they entered West Wilderness County, they went to the branch of the blood-robed pavilion. Leng Shiqi's task relied heavily on intelligence, so he had to rely on the intelligence network of the blood-robed pavilion. Gao Yi and Lian Yi were not his subordinates, but went directly to West Wilderness City. In fact, he came to Hanzhou City for a second purpose, which was also related to the task given to him by eunuch Gao. He asked Guan Feihong, "How is the business of the families in those cities recently?" The business he was talking about was smuggling. Under his tacit consent, dozens of families of various sizes were secretly transporting prohibited goods from the 6 countries of the western region to the Thunder Flame dynasty. Guan Feihong was well aware of this. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, my lord. The business is going well. Right now, our Dark Thunder Manor has accumulated a large amount of resources. I was thinking of sending them to you in 2 days." Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes and pondered, tapping his fingers on the jade chair. During this time, no one dared to disturb him. After a short while, he said, "Very good. Send another message, tell all the families in North County to come to Hanzhou City. Tell them that I want to invite everyone to a banquet." However, when Xiao Cheng, Xiao Qian, and the others heard the word banquet, they couldn't help but shudder. They remembered clearly that every time Leng Shiqi invited someone to a banquet, blood would be spilled. Although they couldn't guess what Leng Shiqi was going to do this time, they knew that people would die again. Chapter 619. The Western Wilderness Prefecture was not peaceful these days. The reason was that the second-rate sect, Wind and Thunder Tower, was destroyed by a group of mysterious experts at lightning speed. The Wind and Thunder Tower had attracted a lot of attention in the Western Wilderness Prefecture because of the last demon slaughtering conference. Although most people were laughing at it, it was undeniable that the Wind and Thunder Tower was a powerful second-rate sect. But such a sect had been completely slaughtered in half a day. Anyone who received this information was extremely shocked. It should be known that there were no top sects in the Western Desolate Province. There were only a few first-rate factions. However, these first-rate factions did not take action. Who had the ability to destroy the Wind Lightning Tower so easily? After many inquiries, people found out that the people who killed the Wind and Thunder Tower were from the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. And the news that Leng Shiqi killed Ji Dong at the gate of the Dark Thunder Guards was not kept a secret. Soon, it was spread out. Combining the two things, people finally understood what was going on. Many people thought that the Wind and Thunder Tower was seeking death. They even dared to offend the Dark Thunder Guards. But more people were shocked by Leng Shiqi's identity and strength. In their impression, Leng Shiqi, the supervisor of the Northern Wilderness, was still at the middle stage of the spiritual aperture realm. When did he suddenly reach the Gang Spirit realm? And he killed Ji Dong with a flip of his hand. Even if he was at the late stage of the Gang Spirit realm, he might not be able to kill him so easily. In addition, some people judged Leng Shiqi's identity from his clothes. He was the supervisor of the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. Although the major sects of the Western Wasteland Province were far away from the Imperial City, and some would never go to the Imperial City in their entire lives, even if they had never eaten pork, they would still have seen pigs run. That eunuch envoy was an important figure who was half a level higher than even a patrol envoy. Leng Shiqi came to the Western Wilderness Prefecture with such an identity. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was the king of darkness of the Western Wilderness Prefecture. But, when did he become the supervisor of the Imperial Eunuch? Only then did some people start to inquire about Leng Shiqi. If they didn't inquire about him, they wouldn't have known. After doing so, they were shocked to find out that Leng Shiqi had such a stormy experience and had such a terrifying battle record. Now, Leng Shiqi had returned to the West Baron Prefecture with so many Dark Lightning Guards. What was he planning to do? For a time, the various sects and forces began to panic. Only the 4 top sects in the Western Wilderness had guessed the purpose of Leng Shiqi's visit, which was to investigate the people who had come to celebrate the Emperor's birthday. These 4 sects also received invitations, but they could only send 2 people at most. When they knew that Leng Shiqi was coming, they immediately recalled all their disciples. All of them either sealed their mountains or went into seclusion, afraid that they would accidentally cause trouble. Not only would they lose the opportunity to meet the sage, but they would also cause endless trouble. Seeing that even the first-rate sects were acting like this, the other sects were even more jittery and cautious. The entire West Desolate County had actually fallen into an extremely rare tranquility. And this was what Leng Shiqi wanted to see. A few days later, Hanzhou City in the West Desolate Province became the most eye-catching place in the entire West Desolate Province. That was because all the Dark Lightning Guards and families in the North region were gathered there. When the Dark Lightning Guards learned that they finally had a backbone, they were naturally very happy. But those families were somewhat trembling with fear. Although they had a cooperative relationship with Leng Shiqi, they had made a fortune together and had made a lot of money over the years. They should have been happy. But Leng Shiqi was really notorious in the North region. In particular, he had easily killed Ji Dong and destroyed the Wind and Thunder Tower, which made Leng Shiqi's notoriety reach an unprecedented height. Back in the Mist City, he had set up a banquet to eliminate families one by one. Now that he set up another banquet, all the families thought it was a Hongmen banquet. But they had to come, and no one dared to refuse. On this day, all the family heads walked into Jinhua Restaurant, the most luxurious restaurant in Hanzhou City. These people were all big shots, but they didn't even dare to breathe heavily in the restaurant. They all sat there in a daze. At noon, Leng Shiqi walked in surrounded by 5 masters of the Gang's spirit realm, including Mr. Huang and Gao Ting. The 6 of them didn't release any spiritual power, but the momentum of the gang's spirit realm alone made everyone feel suffocated, as if even the air was frozen. Ling Shiqi looked around and found that there were 70 or 80 family heads present. It seemed that the business in the north region was getting bigger and bigger, which also meant that his family was getting richer and richer. "I'm very happy that you can come to the banquet," Ling Shiqi said with a smile. "In the past, I also set up a banquet and invited some families. Unfortunately, some of them are no longer here." Speaking of this, all the family heads felt a shadow in their hearts. Ling Shiqi saw that everyone was being honest and continued, "Actually, I've invited everyone here to discuss something." Speaking of this, he clapped his hands, and immediately hundreds of dark lightning guards came in and stood behind each family head. Everyone felt a chill on their backs, and some of them even trembled and almost couldn't sit still. Since things were already like this, what was the point of having a discussion? Just do what you want. Don't worry. I know that you often go to the 6 countries of the Western region to do business and inevitably encounter some dangers on the way. For your safety, I've decided to equip each family with several dark lightning guards to protect you. In this way, the business route will be smooth, and we will naturally earn more. What do you think? When the various family heads heard these words, their thoughts were stirred up. They believed that Ling Shiqi wanted to supervise each and every one of their families. If so, they would be under the surveillance of the dark lightning guards all the time and completely lose all their freedom. But no one dared to refuse. Zhong Cheng, the head of the Zhong family in the Mist City, was the first to stand up and say, "Mr. Lu is right. For Milord to be so considerate of us, this lowly one is moved to tears. This lowly one thanks Milord again." With someone taking the lead, the others could only follow suit and say in unison, "We'll follow Mr. Lu's instructions." Ling Shiqi nodded with satisfaction. In fact, he didn't want to monitor these families because they were already under the surveillance of the Dark Lightning Guards. He actually wanted to use this method to have the Dark Lightning Guards hide in the caravan and sneak into the 6 countries of the Western region to gather information. This matter was done smoothly, so he turned and left. The family heads all breathed a sigh of relief and unknowingly broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time, in the Dark Lightning Manor in the Western Desolate Province, several people gathered in Yu Ruifeng's study. Now that Yu Ruifeng was at the late stage of unity of heaven and man realm, he didn't look as sharp as before and felt much more peaceful. Beside him were the other 3 great supervisors and his right-hand man, Li Hong. They also knew about Ling Shiqi's actions after he came to the Western Desolate Province. Some people were envious of Ling Shiqi because they had seen him enter the Dark Thunder Guards through the back door with their own eyes when he was only at the spiritual pulse realm. Now, Ling Shiqi was an existence that they had to look up to no matter if it was his cultivation or his status. Some people were envious, but of course, there were also people who felt uncomfortable. That person was Duan Chun. He used to be Ling Shiqi's superior and the two of them even had a conflict. Now that Ling Shiqi had achieved great success, would he come to take revenge on him? He sat on the chair and was a little restless, looking like he wanted to say something but hesitated. "Mr. Lu, I have something to say." Duan Chun held back for a long time and finally spoke. Yu Ruifeng said indifferently, "Say it." Duan Chun stood up and said, "Mr. Yu, we've worked together for many years and you know me well. I've always been straightforward. Even if Lu Xingji is an imperial eunuch and has the deep trust of Supervisor Gao, you are the patrol envoy of the Western Desolate Province. Furthermore, we are the ones in charge of investigating the identity of all the guests. But when Lu Xingji came to the Western Desolate Province, he didn't come to see you first. Instead, he went to Hanzhou City and acted like a tyrant. Now, his fame is great and all the sects in the Western Desolate Province fear him. I'm afraid that people only know him as Lu Xingji and not you, Mr. Yu. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.